less people on the call than there actually are. And then, of course, waiting for this to load up, it records the whole thing, but I have to mute it here or make sure that it's muted so that we don't get the echo. And I'll get that. And we are live and rocking and rolling on March 21st, 2023 for Triple T number 64. Yeehaw! And my name is TJ Zebel. I lovingly call myself a professional problem solver among all the other hats that I've worn over the years. If this is your first time here, first time joining us on YouTube or watching the recording, welcome. Thank you for showing up. As with all the YouTube rituals, if you would click the subscribe button and ring the bell and please leave comments and all the above, I would appreciate it. I also have a website at thetswb.com. That's right, thetallskinnywhiteboy.com. I also offer a free 30-minute consult. If there's anything you hear on here that you have questions about, or you just want to chitty chat, or all the above, you have 30 minutes of my time to pick my brain, whatever's left of it. But enough of that. Look at that, I'm getting even faster at this whole introduction thing. I want to say thank you for those of you on camera for showing up and your support. For those of you that are watching the recording, the recording only shows people who have their camera on. So we got people here, we got people on YouTube, and let's get it rolling. Anybody got any ahas, epiphanies, stories they'd like to share from the last 7 days since we were here last? This is usually.
It's not particularly special, but this was from a few weeks ago, but we were talking about when the universe kind of just gives you a feeling to do something extra. And so I actually had the experience of that feeling of something extra I could do for somebody, and I did it. And like, I have no idea what it did for them, but I know I wasn't expecting this part. It made my entire week just go through the roof. It was so awesome. And so if the universe ever gives you that opportunity, definitely grab it with both hands, take advantage of it. It's awesome in a selfish way.
Super awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Who else has something bad? Crickets? Feeler?
Celebration, minor. I finally, and you can all hold me accountable because now I'm saying it even live on YouTube. I have started doing reels on Instagram and social media. I've only dragged my feet about this for about good 10 months. So I'm very excited. Procrastination at its finest.
Now, I'm going to pick on you two ladies just a little bit. We're sitting here celebrating, but you both started it out with, well, it's nothing really big, but you know, I did this thing. It was really cool. I think it's huge. Even though you already told me that it wasn't that much. So you kind of robbed me because it could have been mega huge if you could have been happier when you started. It's kind of like when somebody hands you a gift. Well, it's not much, but I thought of you. And you open it up and it's a heartfelt something that they created on their own. And if they would have just said, I thought of you, made this for you, how much different would it feel?
Great, it would feel different. I think of it as on the scale of things that I think are big. That's why I'm like, yeah, it's kind of small.
I know, that's why I'm busted your chops.
Thank you kindly.
Because after you tell enough people and they go, oh, well, that's nice. Then you can start thinking, well, that was probably small on the scale of things I could have done. But if you just tell us and we're like, holy cow, awesome, woohoo! And you're like, oh, that is bigger than I thought it was. Cool. Just say it. And it only gets to me because I had somebody beat me up for the same thing. Been there, done that. And it was on the gift thing. Well, it's not much, but I just wanted to get you something. And before they even opened it, they said, well, if it's not much, why should I even open it? Well, if it's not much, I can open it later then if it's not much. Or how about if you let me decide what it is before or after I open it? I was like, ooh. So careful with words. They carry a lot of power. Just say it. Welcome. Want to try again? So I did this really awesome thing. I finally got around to doing shorts. Like, holy cow, I've been putting it off like forever. And then it came out and I was like, oh, that was awesome. And we're like, yay. Welcome to Planet TJ. Oh. And there's Mo. I think that's Mo. No, that can't be Mo. Not enough hair. Looking way too clean shaven. Did you have to apply for a job today? Okay. And apparently I'm in a Bucky mood tonight. Let's have some fun. All right. Well, apparently this will walk right into it because the topics that were handed to me this week are forgiveness, staging personalities, and then the combination love bomb, devalue, and discard. So I guess we can start with forgiveness. Do you forgive me for trouncing on you for your announcements and turning it into a learning?
Into a beautiful example.
Mo showed up just enough behind and have no idea what we're talking about. I'll ask you, Mo. If somebody starts off something with, well, it's not much. Well, I got you something, but it's not much. How do you feel?
I guess it would depend what it is, but most people, I try not to let them put themselves down like that or belittle whatever it is they're trying to do.
Okay, just checking.
But when you inform me that you bought me a brand new Corvette, I said, I know it's not much, but I'll take it anyways.
The ladies are now going, I'm going to have to ask them for forgiveness, which is our first topic. And the reason this one came up, I had a couple of clients now who, in their growth of moving into their higher self, whatever you want to call it, they realized that they were going to have to forgive some people for being complete schmucks and narcissists, and especially because they made children together and they are exes now. And so the whole forgiveness thing came up, and for some that can be a challenge. Like, oh, but you don't know what he did to me, and you don't know how long he did it to me, and you don't know how he turned the kids against me, and even if it's not a situation like that, things that people have done to people, and I'm just as guilty because we're human. Last I checked, going through this human experience thing, and I remember the first time that I heard the concept that forgiveness isn't for them. It has very little to do with them. In fact, they don't even have to know that you forgave them. It's for you, so that you can move on from the stories and the anchors and all the above that were put in on you through the experiences that you survived. And my one client, we're just going to say their ex is a real piece of work. And at an event that the kids were at, they both were there together. They had the opportunity to just simply go up to their ex and go, you know what? I forgive you. I forgive you for everything that went down. I'm not gonna hold any anger or anything in or onto it anymore. And their ex was looking around and they said, no, I need you to look me in the eyes. Look me direct in the eyes and understand. I forgive you. And they said when they turned around and walked to their car, the amount of weight that fell off before they could even get to the car blew them away. And for the next 4 days, the weight kept falling off. And even when they were looking back at some of the events that had happened, they didn't have near, in fact, some of them no longer had any impact. All the energy had been stripped away from the recordings, the memories of those events by that simple act of forgiveness. And then, go ahead. No.
I don't want to interrupt you because I don't want to break your flow. But my question is, inside of that, right? How do you get somebody to move when they are still stuck in the victim space? They don't want to move. They're very happy being in that. I've been wronged and they were whatever they were, and I'm justified in feeling the way I'm feeling and everything else.
I like asking them, and I think part of what I set up for them was, what do you like best about being miserable about what happened? And when is the fact that you survived 100% of everything that happened going to be enough? When will all of the lessons that you obtained through surviving that ordeal going to be enough that you don't need to sit there and focus on what they will take from you in the future?
But what happens if that being the victim is their identity? Like they've been playing it for so long. If they lose that, then they've lost their identity. They don't know who they are. You
have to point out to them that they have made it their identity and they have the choice. If they're enjoying being miserable and they identify and they've realized that, oh, they're just freaking miserable. Well, what do you like best about it? I like being miserable. All right, well, then I don't want to be around you because I don't like being around people that enjoy being miserable. And then you also have the assholes who, "Oh, I want to change. I want to change. I hate feeling this way. So what should I do?" Well, I would do ABC. But I don't want to do ABC. Well, what about EFG? Yeah, no, EFG is not for me either. Well, what about all the way up through XYZ? Yeah, I've tried that, and I did, but I really don't want to be miserable. Well, then change. But then I wouldn't be miserable anymore. Then learn to be happy miserably. Find a way to be miserably happy. Hopefully it doesn't kill you. In fact, read The Body Keeps the Score. And there might be a reason in there for you to decide that holding on to this so that you can have health issues from it may be enough to change. And if it's not, then I can't help you. Lenora.
I just wanted to respond to Mo. For me, especially holding on to anger, and I am somebody who was able to put on a big smiley face and nobody had any idea that I was angry. And it wasn't something that I could consciously just like, let it go. That did not jive for me. And it really was more like a demolition to a city that I had built. I couldn't let go of the pain that people had caused, whatever you want to call it. It could have been a fight. It could have been more extreme than that, but I couldn't let go of the pain. And then when I was sitting with it, with somebody else guiding me through some of the processes that we do know, when I was able to do that and literally get that part talking, moving, fighting, doing everything it needed to do, it was able to move through. So I would say for me, I do think it's possible. How it works for you, how it works for somebody else will always be different. Some people can just do somatic touch and boom, stuff just goes. That wasn't my experience, but at least I like to believe that it's possible. If anything is possible, then this could be possible too. And other people have conquered their pain. And that is really inspiring because there's so many things that have occurred in other people's lives that if they can get over that, they can move through that in some way, shape, or form so that they can function on a day-to-day basis. That gave me a lot of hope that I would be able to do the same.
And that doesn't mean that you don't get to enjoy some form of revenge before if you want. If you take them into the hologram deck and they get the pleasure of beating the snot out of the other person in the hologram deck, and that's what discharges their anger, and then they can go, you know what, you're not worth it anymore. You simply are not. It's not in my budget anymore to put up and hang on to this poison. Because anger and all of those things, what's the famous saying? It's like taking poison to make sure that the other person dies. They don't even feel it. It doesn't affect them at all. And you can ruin the rest of your life being stuck in a rut of anger and all the above. And the other person loses no sleep over it. None. In fact, most of them are even oblivious to what they did. What, you're still mad about that? You have to remind them what they did to torque you off because they've forgotten. They've moved so far beyond it. Or if they're narcissistic or anything, they're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oops. Whatever. and they enjoy it. And so my client that got to go up to their ex and tell them straight in their eye that they forgave them, that's why they made the ex look him in the eye when they said it. You have to see, you have to feel and understand. I'm done with the pain, the guilt, the whatever. I forgive you. Doesn't mean that I still don't think you're a narcissistic asshat, but that's on you now. You're out of my life. I choose to move on and move forward. And then this weekend, they had the opportunity to meet their new spouse and see them working and interacting with their children, and got a chance to run up to them or run into them alone at the event, and just said, you know what, I forgive you. This has nothing to do with us. Thank you for taking care of my children and loving them. And same thing, said that the amount of weight that dropped off with that one was, again, astronomical. And so now they are having epiphanies, ahas, breakthroughs, growth, to the point of, they called it, now they're understanding spiritual growth pains, because things are expanding so fast, so big, visions are coming, they're like, ah! So, well, welcome to the next level. I'd like to tell you there's a top level, but from what I understand, there isn't. As soon as you think you've accomplished a level, a new one knocks on your door and goes, hey, come play. Anybody got anything they'd like to add to that? Holly.
Probably go for days on this, and I'll try not to go quite that long, but
Oh, go ahead.
yeah. So a few things that come into my mind. First of all, I think it's important when we're talking about forgiveness that we recognize there are two different kinds of forgiveness. And I think part of the problem is we label them with the same word and think they're the same. So one kind of forgiveness is just, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. I'm letting go of this energy and I'm moving on with my life kind of thing. And another form of forgiveness is I'm restoring trust. And so just because you forgive somebody doesn't mean you're restoring trust. That's a completely different level. So the example I like to use is, let's take and this is a thought experiment. This is not to judge anybody who's actually been through something like this. Pretend you have two daughters and one of them dates a guy who ends up murdering her. Not forgiving him in the I'm not going to let go of that energy isn't doing you any good, isn't hurting him in any way. It's only hurting you. It's that drinking poison for yourself. But that doesn't mean you're going to say, oh, I forgive you. Please date my other daughter. You know, like, you don't have to be stupid about it. It also doesn't mean, hey, what you did is not wrong. Because it's still wrong. It's still not okay. But what it is saying, and it's not saying you don't give justice. But what it is saying is, hey, I'm not going to hold on to this energy anymore. I'm not going to destroy the rest of my life thinking about what you did, and destroy the rest of the lives of everybody I care about around me thinking about what you did. Now this kind of I saw somebody do a really cool analogy for this. This was a little bit lighter, and this is going to get a little religious, but I was at church and we had a problem with the girls not being able to forgive each other, and they were constantly bickering and saying really, really mean things to each other. Anyway, so they brought in a picture of a girl that, she was fictional, but they said, oh, let's pretend that she's a jerk. Go ahead and tell her what you think about her. And then they got to poke pins in her every time they said something nasty. And the girls just got right into it because that was just the energy that was there. Anyway, when they got done, they said, and let's show you what the real effect of that is. And they pulled the picture back, and behind it, there was a picture of Christ, and they'd been poking holes in that picture the whole time. And I know that, like, that particular is very, very religious. But even if you're not religious, if you think of, there's a picture of me behind there, or if it's with an ex, there's a picture of my kids behind there. Yeah, maybe your ex really did destroy your life, really was horrible, really does deserve whatever. But every time, you can't poke that hole in that person without poking a hole in yourself. You can't poke a hole in that person without poking a hole in your kids. Is that worth it? So anyway, I know, and also just kind of as a final one, this is really religious, but my personal belief too is I don't believe anybody can permanently hurt another human being. I believe that there is a force, whatever you want to call it, in the universe that is capable of taking all of that energy and turning it into something positive, even in the work. Because, well, and once again, this comes into, I believe that there's, life after death. And if you don't believe that, that's obviously not going to resonate. But, the intent may have been to harm me, but all that person can do to me is teach me the lessons that I need to learn. And if I tap into that forgiveness energy, forgiveness isn't once again, it's not restoration of trust. It's not saying what happened is okay. It's not saying judgment doesn't need to happen. Forgiveness is merely saying, hey, I'm going to accept that gift of turning that energy into making myself stronger and coming out as a better person and learning the lessons and letting that energy not be victim energy, but learning energy. So anyway, I know I've been going on and on, but just a few of my thoughts.
That was awesome, Holly.
Very much so. Thank you. Anybody else got something they want to add to that?
Well, I really like your analogy, Holly. With every time you poke a hole in that, you poke a hole in Christ or you or the kids or something like that. But what kept squirreling me when you were talking about that is nothing means nothing until we put emotions and meanings to it. Right? So if you haven't labeled it, you haven't put emotion to it. Is it good or bad? It's all what you made of it.
Awesome. Thanks. Anybody else? One of the things that my client also brought up was the concept of when they did that, they realized that they took their power back from their ex. And just went, you don't get access to it anymore. You don't get to rent it. You don't get to destroy it. You don't get to pollute it. It's mine. Mine. No more. Anything else on that before we move to the next one? Any questions, ahas, epiphanies? The next one, staging personalities, actually kind of ties into the whole forgiveness thing. We've gone over this a couple of times on Triple T before about taking the time to recognizing and naming the different personalities that are on stage, if you may, at the time. And I've been getting some major breakthroughs with this protocol with clients. Because I tell everybody, we all have multiple personalities. The person you are at midnight at the bar, happy hour, is not the person you are Tuesday afternoon at the board meeting at work, is not the person that you are at church shaking pastor's hand. And I've had people argue with me, no, I'm always the same. No. Nope. Seen you at the bar. Seen you at church. Two entirely different people. And with that being, I also like to throw in, well, if we all have multiple personalities, then when does it become multiple personality disorder? And my answer to that is when one of them personalities does not fit into the public acceptance arena. You know, I'm sure that, you know, again, here's an extreme deal, but we could all argue that Dahmer had multiple personalities, and a couple of them were disorders. But there had to be a couple of them that were decent enough for him to get around in public without people immediately questioning. So with that, when I have my clients picture the stage, because you are the writer, producer, editor, lead, all the above of your life, your show. And so when you're angry at your ex and running through the gamut of all that is when you're thinking about how angry you are at your ex, who is that? What's the name of that actress that's on stage at that moment? When you're out with friends, being the life of the party, having a blast, who's that actress or actor? How will the public, how do your friends and family, what is it about that personality that they recognize, that they would know if you had shown them the list of actors and actresses that are in your personality lineup? What are the traits that friends and family would recognize and be able to point out when that particular person takes the stage? And I like to have them do at least 5 so they can start getting the concept of what this feels like. Like when I'm partying, that is TJ the DJ. And he took stage literally for quite a while, 18 years of my life for sure. Actually longer than that. He got paid 18 years of my life, but he still likes to show up every now and then. Get that DJ voice going out. That's right. It's time to rock and roll, party time. Let's go. And then there's Quiet Ed, who just likes to sit in a corner and watch people watch, think about stuff. Then there's the curious side of me. And then there's the hothead. I try to keep him off stage as much as possible, but every now and then he just likes to run out there and kick everybody off the stage and scream and yell and rant and all the above, get my blood pressure up, and eventually one of the other ones will come on stage and go, "Are you done? Are you done? Look at all the energy you burned up. And the stage is on fire. Way to go." When you tie that into forgiveness, which actor or actress of yours would be the best one to put on stage to figure out how to make that happen? And which actor or actress might have to be written out of the script because they were the one that was infected with the poison that needed to be forgiven. Any input, ahas, comments, insights you guys want to share on that one? Because you all look like I just put a damp towel over the top of your head. You're just like.
I'll throw something out there. The person who was my forgiveness person was somebody had the same name as somebody I needed to forgive, which I thought was very, very interesting because it's basically I am her. So it was really interesting to identify with that, but don't know what it means, but it was very fascinating.
Awesome. Then yes, I think we forgot to put in there, sometimes the person who needs to be forgiven is our past self. We were there. We were the common denominator. That was one of the things I had to do to be able to be ready for an actual relationship. Because when I look back at all of the relationships I had been part of, many which just had issues, I realized that I was the common denominator. Whoopsie. And I had to forgive my past because I did the best I could at the time with the tools, knowledge, and energy I had available to me. If I could have done better, I would have. Does that sound familiar to any of you? But that meant that I had to forgive those versions so that I didn't go back and keep focusing on them and bring them to the present to screw up what I was trying to build in the future. That makes sense? Yeah, we're pretty quiet tonight. Go ahead.
One of the things that comes to mind when you're talking about that is people will be hard on you for stuff and maybe get after you or whatever because you did something wrong. But I always find it very interesting because if you look at who's giving you the most shit, who's been the hardest on you, 9 times out of 10 you'll find out it's you.
Mm-hmm.
And is that energy you want to create? Is that serving you? Is that going to make your life better by staying in that negative energy and really putting yourself down for it? Just a question to ask yourself.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that also points straight at negative self-talk. I've caught, you guys know by now, I call people out on negative self-talk all the time. And the favorite thing I like to ask them is, what if somebody else that you liked and respected said that to you in a crowd? How would you feel? And yet you can toss that own poison on yourself and not think about what it's doing. Your mind listens to the words you say way more than we ever thought. In fact, a lot of people that I find with limiting beliefs and low self-esteem, self-image issues, when we drill down and back to where it all started, probably 1 or 2 comments when they were kids, and they've been milking it ever since. Kind of like that, oh, I had a bad day. Really? You had the whole day was bad? Or did you have a bad 5 minutes and you milked it for the rest of the day? Really, what was it that made your day bad? Well, somebody said I was a dunce. And they followed you around all day long. You're a dunce, you're a dunce, you're a dunce, you're a dunce. Or did you just do that on your own? Well, Yeah. And I know it's easy to get caught in that trap. Been there, done that. But with the staging personalities, if you catch yourself in something like that, who's on stage? What are they doing on stage? Why are they allowed to sit there on stage and repeat these lines that they got from some schmuck 5 hours ago? I'm dealing with, I'm not saying it's the easiest thing in the world. I've been dealing with an event that I cleaned up yesterday. Got talked into buying some product for a remodel under the guise that the person who talked me into it would buy whatever was left over. And when they found out that I didn't use any of it and I had all of it left over, they suddenly got amnesia. And actually got a quote on text. Well, I must have been like high or on drugs when I said that. I would never say that. I'm like, I would have never bought the stuff if you hadn't have said that, because I had plenty of product already purchased. And I've been putting off selling it just because I had so much anger. The angry little me was taking stage every time I thought of all that product in my shop. And finally, I went around to listing it for sale at a slight profit, and had, by the end of the day, had 17 replies to purchase it. And one person bought it, and I made a profit. And I caught myself today looking at where it was, still having the same argument of and I'm like, no, you don't get to be on stage anymore. It's sold. We've made a profit. Shut up. Go. It's not serving anymore. And I realized I had to forgive the person who talked me into buying the stuff, because if they hadn't, I wouldn't have made a profit on it. So there's that. And that leaves us with 18 minis left for the last topic. Anybody got anything else they want to share on?
I had a couple things that came up when you were saying that. First thing that came up is just this concept of real or imagined. And the beautiful thing is, if we forgive it all, we don't have to even separate out what's real and imagined. I was especially thinking of, prior me, because even that first person who said that I was a dunce, that was probably false. Just because they said it didn't make it true, So, and then the other thing that came to mind was just how cheaply sometimes we're willing to sell our peace of mind. Like,
Yes.
Oh, somebody robbed me of $10 and I'm going to let that ruin 5 years of my life thinking about it. And it's like, isn't my peace of mind worth $10? Just forgive it, call it a gift, and let it go. Anyway, just a couple things came up.
Squirrel just came up and handed me a little something. My father witnessed me borrowing a certain person with a reputation $20. And he goes, after the guy left, he goes, "What are you doing? He's never going to pay you back. You know that." And I said, "Yeah, I know, Dad. He'll also cross the street if he sees me coming down the sidewalk to avoid me asking him if he has the $20. And it was the best $20 I invested to keep him away from me in a long while." And Dad went, "Oh, Right. Sometimes $20 is worth having somebody just. And it worked. He avoided me for about 4 years. Winning. And no, I haven't thanked him yet, but I plan on it. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't do it as narcissistically as I want to right now. Which brings us to the next topic. Oh, yes, Lenora, please.
You had mentioned about at the very beginning who's the actress or actor that needs to be standing up right now, and I find that one will come up, but then other actresses will also try and come up at the same time. So it's being keenly aware of saying, okay, no, you got to sit down. No, you got to go sit back down. So it definitely is an art and a practice to maintain the one that you want out in front.
Oh yeah, because one of the things that I did with a client today was they were trying to figure out why so many things keep coming up even after this. And I pointed out to them that every actor or actress has 3 brain. And so you can't just say, well, this person is on stage. While they're on stage, what are they following? Their head brain, their heart brain, or their gut brain? Where are they speaking from? Even the angry one can come out and speak from the gut. So, not to, muddy up the minutia of all the options, but that's the joys of the human experience. But the more we understand and get in touch with that, the less we are to be dragged down a black rabbit hole, blindly not understanding why we're so miserable. Does that make sense? Anybody else got any comments or things they'd like to add to that?
Just to add to that, TJ, one of the things you really need to look at is the stacking effect, because it may not be the $10. It may be the $10, and it may have been the $20, and it may have been the rate, and it may have been, and it may have been, and it may have been, and then the $10 is just the final thing.
Exactly. That's why a number of people get so caught off guard, especially like when you look at some of the personalities. Like I think it was 2 Triple T's ago, we talked about personality colors, and the yellows being the tree hugging, save the whale, would give you the shirt off of their back in the wintertime because they didn't want to see you cold type of people. They're also the ones that will shove things down, shove it down, shove it down, shove it down, shove it down until the pressure is so much that when they explode, people around them are like, whoa, what the heck, dude? Oh, what is going on? All I said was, but it was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And I know, because I've done that before. And even I've had to go, what was that all about? I mean, all they did was da-da-da-da-da. But I realized that I'd been stuffing so much energy down for so long that I just couldn't put one more ounce of energy into the packet without it busting open. And there have been times when I could feel that pressure cognitively, luckily, and was able to look at the person and go, you know, this is a good time for us to separate. I'm going to walk that way and you're going to walk that way for both of our safety. And something in the energy of how I said it, they were like, "Ooh. Okay." Except for one person in the bar one night whose friend had to recognize that energy for them and stepped in and went, "We're going to go now." "No, I'm not done yet." And then their friend is like, no, I need you alive. So we're going to go. And I forgave them because they were drunk and stupid. That's a whole nother story. And that leaves us 10 minutes to discuss what people are wondering, what in the world is love bomb, devalue, and discard all about? And that was a fun and interesting breakthrough with one of my wait to date protocol clients who has had a history of dating narcissists. True narcissists, when they describe some of their partners, and they realized it took the wait to date protocol for them to forwardly, preemptively recognize the pattern of the love bomb, the devalue, and the discard, which is a great little utility pattern of narcissists, because they went out on a date with Mr. Hunk of Junk, looking good, 6'4", blue eyes, built, supposedly very good profession, no kids, wife cheated on them, and love bombed my client. And then all of a sudden, they were not exactly available, and time was getting devalued, which is a good way to set the hook really good. And then all of a sudden, they became unavailable, which my client realized was the discard. And the best part about that lesson was that it happened in 2 weeks' time. Bada bing, bada boom, bada slam. And it validated the wait to date protocol for them at a level that even I'm impressed with, if I may say, because the amount of lessons that they gleaned from those 2 weeks and the importance they realized on the trifecta of Echo Talk, 3 magic questions, values and criteria elicitation, and using all of that to always be testing everyone around them and analyze all men around them so that they could get better at picking up on values and criteria and seeing how it applied to them, so that when their wait to date protocol was finished, they would not only have much higher skill sets for analyzing and testing potential partners, but they would have the latest version of their own values and criteria for a partner. And I've heard a lot of things about, we've got certain planets in alignment and phases going on and all this stuff. And this is a period of enlightenment and awakening and stuff. It must be, because I've got 4 clients now that are having these type of massive breakthrough epiphanies in working on their relationships. And so I wanted to point out the concept of that love bomb, devalue, and discard, so that it can be available for anybody else that's looking at the concept of dating, or if any of you have clients that are coming to you for help with relationships, to help them have the ability to recognize what's happening. The love bomb period is awesome. Oh, lots of feel good. Oh, yes, you're beautiful. You're everything. You are it. You are the But pay close attention to when that drops off. When, how, why, when things start to get distant. That also combined with push-pull that we talked about, I think it was last week. When you combine those two together, it makes a real good evaluation of what's happening in a new relationship. And they also had the ability to evaluate people who've been married for a while, listening, watching, and evaluating what's going on with them, why and how they're dealing with it. And that leaves us 3 minutes. Any questions, ahas, epiphanies on that section? Bueller? Well, then we could,
How would you consider always be testing?
always be testing?
Yes.
Well, considering my wife got offended when she asked me, she said, so what, like you're always testing too? Well, absolutely. She was like, what? And I'm like, I'm always testing because I need to know that we're still in alignment. Values and criteria change constantly as we evolve. And when you think about the metaphor or example that William Pearl Bridges gave about relationships, I'll go over it real quick again. She said the biggest mistake people make, especially with getting married, is they believe that if you think of everybody in canoes on a river, and that's your life, and you start out and for 18 years you're, for the most part, especially the first 5-10 years, you're tethered to mom and dad's canoe. You're learning how to paddle, you're learning how to deal with the rapids and everything and all the above, and then eventually you're in your own canoe, in charge of your own paddling. And then you go through a couple of relationships where you bump canoes. And eventually you meet the one that bumps your canoe the best. And you decide that you want to be married. Well, everybody thinks that now the two canoes become one and both of you are paddling the same canoe. No. Nope. You are both still in your own canoe. You have just made an agreement that the two of you would paddle next to each other and help each other out through the rapids and all the above. And if you're not constantly testing, it's real easy for those canoes to drift apart without you even knowing. And all of a sudden, one of the canoes is on the other side of a landmass on a different tributary. And one day you wake up and you're like, what the what? Where'd you go? How are you over there? What? And the two of you have to decide, even though you don't know how big the landmass is, do you have enough energy to drag your canoe over the landmass to get back in the same water? Some do, some don't. And so that's where I say, always be testing. Always. Yes.
You saying that also brought something else to my mind too. For those of you who know John Gottman, he says that in the best relationships, 60% of the problems that you're going to have to be endured and cannot be cured, basically. So he says, but what you say is this relationship's worth it. It's worth doing the work. It's worth putting up with this. You know, we're going to find ways around the 60% that we can live with it, kind of like you live with a bad knee. You don't amputate your leg because you got a bad knee. But the reason that popped in my head with this conversation partly is one of the best ways to spot a narcissist in love bombing. If at any point you think there's a relationship that doesn't need work, that doesn't need that 60%, you're not being honest. Somebody's probably love bombing you. So that could be a very quick way to find you with the wrong person, is because it seems too easy at times.
Anybody else? Because we are now into your hour, which means I didn't see any questions preset in the chat, which means now I'm going to have to. Yes, Laura.
I have a question. How do you guys, and open to everybody, how do you deal with disappointment?
And for those of you that are watching this for the first time, this is your guys' hour, so I always let everybody answer first. I'll answer last. So who's got an answer for Lenore?
How do I handle disappointment? Not very well. Sometimes it's not bad, but sometimes it does get me still. So I'm also eager to hear people's thoughts on this.
And my first thought was, how do I handle it and how should I handle it are not always the same. But there's also the healthy ways I handle it and the not healthy. So I'll focus on the healthy. I'm guessing that's kind of what you were hoping for. So the first step is, obviously disappointment. The number one thing is that I didn't meet my expectations. And there could be a couple of responses to that. Maybe I had the wrong expectations. Or maybe I didn't do what was needed to become the person who deserved to have those expectations met. So the first thing I'll do is I'll say, is there something I need to learn about myself that caused this disappointment? If I got fired from my job, was it because I wasn't showing up every day? I wasn't doing my job? And do it in an honest way, so I've been reading Franz Barden's Initiation into Hermetics, and he talks about having a white mirror and a black mirror. And one of the things you need to make sure is when you're looking at yourself, you're not looking into carnival mirrors. You're not completely exaggerating. And some people exaggerate the good too much, or, I just want to get information. This is not about beating myself up. This is not about minimizing and defending. This is just about being honest and looking and saying, what did I contribute to this expectation not being met? But then the next thing I have to remind myself, and the answer isn't always right in front of me. Sometimes the reason my expectations weren't met is because you know, call it God, the universe, whatever, has something even better for me planned. And so, for example, I look at some of the crushes I've had on people. If I had ended up married to that person, you know, what I thought was the best thing in the world, they were not a good fit. The reason, you know, I just wasn't mature enough to see it. I wasn't, you know, I could have been making myself miserable by getting what I wanted. And so sometimes it's that reminder of sometimes disappointment is just because I haven't seen how this is going to pay off yet. And this could be the best thing that's ever happened to me. I just don't know yet because I haven't had it play out yet. So just a couple things. They're not, obviously that's not every single form of disappointment, but just kind of a place to start.
Awesome. Good to see your face, Brian. Who else has something for Lenora?
Well, I guess I would probably be on the same lines as Polly. When you have a disappointment, well, what did that make it mean? And what emotions did I attach to it? You know, because sometimes, like if somebody's late for dinner, for example, and you're disappointed that they didn't show up on time, well, you could be mad at them, or maybe they got in a car accident, or you're making it mean all these things, and it might have just been just as simple as they got busy and forgot it. Who knows, right? So you put yourself through all these emotions because you made it mean whatever you made it mean. And then, like you said, that is there a lesson there? Sometimes the biggest gifts you get is things that you weren't hoping for. You know, I really, really want that, but by not getting that, there was something better that came down the pipeline. You'd have been too busy to get what was better for you if you had taken what was less. So I guess it's always looking at, again, you can create an upward spiral in around it, or you create a downward spiral. You choose. See a positive in it, make something better out of it, or you can do a downward spiral and something negative. That helps.
Thanks for sharing. Fran.
Well, I guess Maurice is right that, yeah, it is what it says about you and how you perceive that disappointment and what you're going to do about it. And my habit, which needs changing, is just to cut and run. But it needs careful consideration and your level of determination. Are you going to turn this disappointment into something that you can use? Are you going to be creative with it and let it grow into something else? I think there's a process where you have the disappointment and it's like a hard lump inside of you. And then you can choose to maybe transform it into a different energy like determination. I'm not going to be defined or destroyed by this. And then you get into the creative process where you can actually do something with it. But this topic today is so typical, perfect for myself, because I've just done a big change, if you don't mind me sharing. Having seen that there was an unacceptable situation, and I went to Paul McKenna's relationship destroying protocol, where you actually, if there's no way forward, you can actually change completely how you feel about somebody. And it's a sort of process of cycling overlap and overwhelm unpleasant pictures. And yes, it definitely changes how you look at the person, because I had the opportunity to be sitting next to my special person yesterday and didn't find them attractive. But there is a personal cost to pay, because you're deliberately letting go of a dream and wonderful feelings. And there's a part of me going, no, don't want to do this. And consequently, I had some really violent and strong dreams last night. But again, it was about sometimes you got to do what you don't want to do to live your life better. And that was what I got out of that dream, your session this morning, and your question, Lenora. So that's my cut on it.
Awesome. Question for you, Fran. Did you let go of a 10 or did you let go of a king?
I would say definitely less than a 10, but the obsession was there. It
Go
was,
ahead.
it was a big obsession.
Yes. Oh, 8s and 9s and jacks and jokers can be a blast. But you're a queen and you deserve a king.
Thank you.
And my little chime in on Lenora's disappointment. 2 questions. Which actress is on stage and which brain is she thinking from that is creating all the disappointment? Is she thinking from her heart? And is it the romantic one, or is it the hard charging business one that is disappointed that they didn't listen to their gut? Or because I had to deal with it with the product in the shop. Massive disappointment. And mine was with the communication person who should have gotten it in writing and trusted this person when they said they would do what they did, or what they were going to do, and didn't follow through. So I had to analyze who's on stage. Unfortunately, they still think they own the stage, and I'm like, we made a profit. Shut up. You should be happy now. All right, well, yeah, but it took us this long to make a profit. Off with you. Anybody else?
I find this quite fascinating that I'm learning so much about myself that I don't want to. Perhaps that I should ask my wife that question about disappointment, because I get whatever I want. She gives in.
Well, find out where the canoe is.
Yeah, everybody
Together.
else, I have say based on what everybody else is saying too, I had a couple other thoughts. Another thing is having healthy boundaries is really important, because so if you're disappointed by a clearly communicated, mutually agreed upon boundary, and I mean, you could talk about it and say, oh, is this, we just didn't anticipate something, whatever, but I think that you've got to take action. It's about, and it's not about getting emotionally invested. It's about, I know what the consequences for that. I do it. But also sometimes I think that we might have something that we didn't communicate, or it wasn't mutually agreed upon and it was unreasonable for the other person because they just can't live up to it. I'm just thinking there are so many people who, if their partner was late 10 minutes to dinner every night, maybe they just are wired that that's not something they can do. But if there's somebody who's going to stand by you when it counts and they're willing to make a bunch of other sacrifices, maybe 10 minutes late to dinner shouldn't matter. Versus somebody will kick somebody out for being 10 minutes late to dinner, but they'll let somebody else, love bomb them and then constantly tell them that they're fat and they're lazy and they're disgusting. And that right there, they won't call them out on it. There won't be any consequences for it, and they won't end that relationship. So, I think that there are times that disappointment is real and we need to take action. And maybe sometimes disappointment is from having unfair expectations. And maybe we should recognize the person has so much other that we're focusing on something that really probably is tiny.
Awesome.
I appreciate all your insights. So thank you to everyone. Mine wasn't a relationship. Mine was that it was an opportunity that was brought by the universe, and it seemed like a good opportunity, and now it's kind of like this. So that's what mine is.
Were you able to get any lessons out of the transaction?
Not yet. Or yes, and I'm just not going to say them right now.
Yep. You don't have to say it. Just sometimes, just like with what I dealt with, it was a refresher in the lesson department. I was like, oh, All right, all right, all right, all right. Well,
I didn't even know I needed a refresher, so I'm a little befuddled here.
welcome to life. I know. I've had a few of those lessons come by, and I'm like, I thought I had that one all done. No, this is version number 875. It's an update.
Yeah, when you think you've got it all sorted or you've learned the lesson, life comes up and goes, whack. No, you didn't. Here's
Yeah.
something new.
Like, fine. But the alternative is, if you don't want to keep learning lessons, you got to pop yourself into a little safety bubble, wrapped with bubble wrap. You're not even allowed to pop the bubble wrap and do nothing, accomplish nothing, feel nothing, do nothing. And even in there, you learn lessons. You're like, this is boring as all get out. So,
If you make lots of mistakes, you get lots of opportunities.
yes,
Silver lining.
even blind dogs will find a bone every now and then.
Somebody said even a blind squirrel finds a nut every now and again. So yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. That leaves us with 44 minis left. Who's got another one? Rob.
Mine goes on to pain relieving protocols that I understand ghost hand. I understand being able to numb certain areas. I've got a situation where there is a procedure required by a woman, an intimate procedure to take a test. How does one numb that particular region so that it can be done comfortably?
Who wants to jump in first?
Well, I'd go back to childbirth techniques for a start, as in, progressive relaxation. And because you've got more than one thing happening. You've got the invasive situation, and it's extremely personal, and you've got the discomfort. And with everything, tension creates the discomfort. So making a point of going through the relaxation and, going back to the old techniques of verbally going through relaxing, from your toes to your head, and maybe anchoring that so that during the procedure that can happen. But, the biggest problem is that when you're actually in a clinical room about to have this invasive situation, you tense up. So it's interrupting that pattern that's the problem. But yeah, childbirth techniques and progressive relaxation and anchoring that is not a bad way to begin.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Anybody else? If you have enough time, have them both practice pain blocking, whether it's through blocking the feel of a hard pinch or something, placing an anchor or a procedure that I had to go through this when I had some work done on varicose veins, and if anybody has had that done before, it's a challenging one because you're awake and they're putting a straw up your veins and putting glue inside the vein to basically glue it shut. And I was good at it because of what we do. I was able to basically flood my body with white energy, which but it took me a while to get ready for all the stupid questions. People taking me out of trance. How are you doing? How are you doing? I'm like, how about if we try this? I'll let you know if I'm not doing. Would that be okay? If I'm having an issue, I'll let you know. Other than that, could we just all be quiet? Because you're invading my white energy and I'm doing fine. And so if you diffuse those possibilities, I call it diffusing the bombs before you get to the site, so that you're left of bang, and just let them, show them a couple of things that work to build up their confidence. And then they can move that to whatever portion of their body they have to, because obviously you're not going to, let's test it out, see if it works. No. But if they can get good at color breathing and filling up for that, for pain block, and then let them know that they have ways of dealing with interruptions or things of that nature, that will strengthen the ability. And Elijah's got his hand up.
Hello.
Hello.
I just wanted to say also, I think when it comes to dealing with anything private, personal, or like intimate areas and things like that, you can work through the anxiety of it approaching, even though it's not here yet, and any kind of fear or shame or embarrassment, that kind of thing, because all of those types of emotions are going to make the pain worse. You'll often find, like, people like Milton Erickson say things that it's the fear of pain that makes pain amplified much more than the pain itself. And I think it's also true for if it's sensitive operation, then any kind of feelings of anxiety or embarrassment or anything like that. If you could inoculate those ahead of time, then the pain that they experience, the physical pain that they experience, should be much less. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool.
I've got a little bit to add as well, if you don't mind. Going back to the childbirth thing, if I understood the mechanics of what muscles were doing what and how that was working, and why, if you relax that particular part, you're going with the flow rather than against the flow, that was a help. But not everybody wants to know, the body mechanics of what's going on, but it may be helpful. The other thing to remember is that laughter, if you can find a way to actually bring humor into the situation beforehand, so that you can actually see the funny side of it. Laughter, you can't stay tense while you're laughing. So if you can actually anchor all these ridiculous, and having an ironic sense of humor is kind of good for this too. But if you can anchor laughter so that they can also go outside of themselves and see the ridiculous situation, because it is, it's very undignified and ridiculous. So humor is a wonderful anchor. And then you're going to release all your stress removal hormones, your endorphins, your dopamines, and it will be a much easier situation. Thanks.
So I have a question I have for you, Fran, on that. So is it something that you would do to a client, or is it something that the client can do themselves? And the second part of that question would be, would you set all those anchors in place that you're working on yourself or on a client? Would you set anchors and pressure points in place so that when they get the thing, they can act?
it's definitely something that you need to practice beforehand. Sorry, the sound wasn't great. Definitely need to do the practice on the anchoring for the client, and to have them able to do it for themselves, because I don't know whether, usually it's just you and the doctors when you're doing this sort of stuff. So it's got to be set up so that you can self-handle or self-trigger while you're in that situation. And I mean, the most difficult thing is remembering to do it, because once you're in there, the fear and the alien situation and the bright lights take over. Did that answer, or have I missed something?
No, you pretty much answered it. But the only thing I'd like to add to that, probably the more you stack it, the more effective it is.
Jump in here too. I don't know hopefully you can hear me. I don't know how much this will help everybody. I actually, for several years, had to do pelvic physical therapy, which was extremely painful, extremely awkward, whatever. But some of the techniques that my therapists used in that scenario, first of all, they said, every time you feel the pain, greet the pain, be curious about the pain, lean into the pain. And a lot of this goes with what Fran was saying, but like, if you're thinking about, oh, what exactly is going on, the mechanics of it, more than just focusing on, oh, this hurts, or, getting curious about, and why does this work? And why is this procedure useful? That can help a bit. And then the other thing is, this won't work for everybody. You have to know your relationship with the person and what they're comfortable with doing. But also, other than pain, what else could I cause this? What could this energy be? But that you do have to be very careful with that one, because it could get to energy that maybe people don't want to be expressing in that environment. But if they're of the kind, that could make all the difference in the world if they're comfortable expressing that and knowing that that's happening, if that makes any sense. I won't get any more explicit on YouTube, but.
Hands flying up all over the place, so.
I was going to mention and I love that you pointed that out, Holly, about leaning into the discomfort, because when you lean into it, especially if it's physical pain, I know at least with energetic pain, it does move. Do people find the same thing when they're leaning into a lot of physical pain? And I know, like, move your mind into where it is and really resonate with that. I don't know if that helps anybody. If it does help, then control the pain, because then you have more focused attention on it.
Elijah?
Yeah, I was just going to add, excuse me. I was just going to add that I don't know if there's going to be anesthetic involved or not, but if it is an eyes open procedure when you're conscious, then perhaps laughing should be like an inner laugh in your head, like you're cracking up in your head, because you wouldn't want the body to jerk and move while they're operating. Yeah, so just be aware of that.
Yep. Grace?
I don't know enough about this particular topic, but what's coming to me in the question that maybe somebody can answer it for me is there a possibility, because everybody experiences things different, so if there's maybe an extreme amount of pain, have you linked that pain that's occurring there to trauma or something else that's happened in the past? I'm not sure, right?
To be more specific, it's a PEP test.
But yeah, so but even with that, like, so what I'm thinking is, so like, if somebody was raped, let's say for an example, they might be linking that, and then so the test might be, you know what I'm saying? It might be worse.
It's to do with a mature body.
First thing is to warm the speculum. That makes a big difference.
I'll jump in there too. Oh,
sorry, I'm just going to say, you see with that one line how Fran just cut the whole tension in the call. That's what you're looking for. It can be as simple as that.
Say too, like, being mature brings up emotions as well. And if you could tap into and clear, whether it's embarrassment or, any of that sort of thing, clearing those emotions can definitely help.
Just open your legs and think God save the king, or sing the national anthem in your head.
This was Doubtfire.
Quick question. Isn't there a protective sphere that you can also do, but you can also go back and resolve the pain from the initial event, or even set in a protective sphere ahead of time before the event, and then also pace it forward?
Bloody
Seeing a few head
brilliant.
nods.
Brilliant. That is probably the most effective of all, to actually preset it so that it is easy and comfortable and the energy's there, and that she's in control of changing the color of the energy or whatever. That if she's preset, I think that's brilliant, Honora. Beautiful.
I'll pass all this
I
on.
learned it from TJ, so I was just trying to actually remember. There was a protective one that was on the timeline, though. So you put them in a sphere, and I know Brent Baum came up with one. If anybody's doing any protective energy work, when you put a boundary up, when you put your sphere on, whether it's a suit of armor or whatever it is, he actually has people put mirrors on the outside. So whatever comes in gets reflected back and it bounces off. So I always really liked that one too.
Sorry, I just saw a disco ball.
Nothing wrong with having a disco in your head while that's going on.
I pictured the doc going there and seeing sparkles coming out going, oh, there's a disco ball in there. Oh, yes, it's my protective disco ball, and don't mess with it. Don't break it.
Now you're peeing glitter.
I love you guys. So did you get enough options on that one, Rob?
Indeed.
Awesome. That's what
Great
I love
question.
about this second hour. So who's got another one we can have fun with? Come on, kids. I know that every week I say, I know that there's a couple of you out there that have actual notebooks. Just turn to page 7, read question number 4 on the right-hand side.
I have 3 questions like ready to go. So I'm just doing my best to be respectful of everybody and just making sure. Okay. So the first question I have is about Chinese facial reading. And my forehead has changed significantly over the last number of years. And Holly was actually the first one that I met when I went to Identity by Design on Zoom in the pandemic. But I used to have a mark that went right across my head, and I don't have it anymore. And I don't know what it is when it comes up and it's still connected into that line in your forehead, because I do notice family members that have that. So I didn't know what it was.
Okay, kids, you all go first.
Without seeing it, it could be more than one thing. The first thing that came to my mind, because a lot of times in face reading, what people forget is that lines will bleed into each other. And so that actually sounds to me like a combination of worry, overthinking line merging with an overly skeptical line. Because for
that's a triple whammy. Ooh.
A normal skeptical line might be like right here. If it's coming all the way around that it's merging, that's probably like a I'm very skeptical and I overthink everything kind of line. I could be wrong, but that was just the first thing that came up when you were describing it.
Overthinking one, which I'm pretty super stoked about, because which goes for, even though I am still a vouched overthinker, it's gotten so much better. So this is like huge celebration. but it comes up and then over. So I didn't know, I know there's a temper for that person also. And then another one, when they don't connect, but they're close, is it does the line have to go all the way across for it to be a complete? Okay. Now, when you do Chinese facial reading, can you just go up to somebody and be like, well, what's that? And just suddenly, before you know, you have a waterworks situation?
I'd say it depends on how intuitive the person is. If somebody's very, very logical, then saying, oh, what happened to you at age such and such that has to do with this, like doing it from a very left brain place is probably more likely to trigger something. Whereas if they're very intuitive, just walking up and saying, what's that, might trigger it as well.
I like that little twist. I did not see that coming, Holly.
Anybody else? Because yes, I have dealt with more than a few abreactions when pointing out certain things. And luckily, I was able to jump right in and fix it right away. But the reason that I have most of my clients take selfies of their lots of different angles on their face, as you clear up stuff, lines will appear and lines will disappear. Faces change massively during this type of work. So, yeah, in fact, I read my face every morning when I get up. I'm like, okay, anything new? Oh, well, this one's coming in nicely. I wonder what that was all about. Okay. And some of my transition lines like to fade in and out. So I'm not sure if it's like, he's got it. No, he doesn't. No, he's learning. No, he's not. The ones I like the best are clients that have deep sorrow lines. And you fix that and that line goes away and totally validates that you've actually cleared it up. So it's like hypnotic Botox without the side effects. Anybody get, did you get what you were looking for? You got, anybody else got anything, or are we ready for question number 2?
All right, so question number 2. What did Elijah say? There's no better convincer than a line vanishing from your face.
That's why I have them take pictures before we get going. And it's funny because they'll be like, huh? And I tell them a little bit about Chinese facial reading, and they're like, huh? And after a while, I'm like, remember those selfies you took? Take a complete another set and then compare them side by side. And they're like, hey, this one that, right, it's gone. In this picture, I have, right, hey. I'm like, yay. Now I've got this one right here. What's that? Well, that means you made it through the dark night of the soul and came out for the better, and you learned some lessons. Oh, you got a bunch of them. I got a bunch of, I got them all over. Yeah, pull up that facial chart in the book. That's my face right there. Yeah. Right, Holly? You've been to enough of the Chinese faith. The first time I met Lillian Pearl Bridges, her and Kelly both, oh my gosh, look at his face. I'm like, yes, right there. Amazing technology. I'm acting younger most of the time. I let my kid take stage as much as possible.
Okay, so my next question. How do you like to deal with judgment coming in?
Okay, who's up? Come on.
Now I keep going first, but I'll go first again. So I actually had a really helpful, in-depth, very long conversation with somebody about this very topic about a week ago. And the first thing that we came to the conclusion is, if you think about it, because we kind of think of like, oh, society has standards. But the truth is society doesn't even have unified standards. And so we just kind of got thinking about, and also there are cases where we could look back in history where I think 90% of everybody would agree that history got it wrong. And so, I mean, once again, this comes to it's always good if somebody you trust who's earned the right to give you feedback is giving you helpful feedback on a way that you can improve your life. So you should never go through life saying, oh, I'm perfect. I never need to have any feedback or anything like that. But I mean, and TJ has a great one that I'm sure he'll share way of saying it. But the other thing to remember is, like, for instance, if you have, you know, a far right person and a far left person together, there is no way you could possibly please both of them simultaneously. And so there comes a point where you just say, you know what, I have to have my own judgment. And if somebody hasn't earned the right to give me feedback and they haven't earned rapport and they don't really know me, there's no way they could give me good judgment anyway. So just learning what value to give that judgment is very important.
I would recommend listening to Monica Lewinsky's TED Talk. That really hits it. And her comments are so admirable. I was very moved by listening to that.
Cool.
I'm curious, are you talking about your own judgments or being judged?
Being judged by others?
Oh, you just shake that off. Because, I mean, it took a while, and I'm not exactly sure how, but I got to a point where I placed a higher value on my own opinion of myself than on other people's opinions of me. And it's not the only place, but it's one place where my opinion absolutely trumps everyone else's opinion if it's about me, because I've been living with me my whole life and I know me better than anyone else. So, you know, like I find that judgment kind of easy to shrug off. Again, it wasn't always like that. I'm not quite sure how I got there, but it kind of just happened over time, you know.
So, Elijah, if your opinion, what happens if your opinion is not very high yourself? Maybe you're hard on yourself, or maybe you put yourself down. Then what?
Well, it still holds more value than other people's opinions. The question then becomes is, do you want to change your opinion of yourself? Because you are what you think you are. And we're all limited by that, because not everyone is thinking as expansively as they should be, even myself included. I'm a very optimistic person for the most part. You know, I do get frustrated still. I'm only human. But for the most part, I'd like to think of myself as a rather optimistic person. But even I am not thinking as expansively as I could be. And I could be even more up for it, if you like, up for this game of life, you know? So the question I would then ask them, if you know, if someone's opinion of themselves was bad or putting themselves down, I would ask them if they're enjoying themselves right now, you know, and if they like being the way they are. And if they're happy being the way they are, then who am I to try and change them? You know what I mean? But if, like most people, the answer comes back, well, it would be nice if, then you have something to work through, you know, and that's an opportunity for you as a therapist or a reality technician.
Look at that reframe. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
Anybody else? because I've got a few things. First off, how much is in the budget with this person? Because opinions are like buttholes. Everybody's got one. Some of them are stinky. Some of them are dirty. Is it in the budget to deal with a stinky butthole? Second,
Funny, you should say, is it in the budget? What's the second?
who's the person on stage that is worried about this? Because I know that somebody's not on stage that would be like, whatever, yeah, they are mean.
They fight to be on stage,
Well, of course they do.
Huge battle.
But the best part is, you're the writer, the editor, the director, and the star. And at some point, you have to look who's on stage, who's pulling the drama, going, but what do they think of me? And you can go, that just doesn't seem to fit right now, because I checked the budget and we're all out. So who else has got a line? And that's when the other one comes in and goes, what do they think of me? Whatever. I am awesome. If they can't see my awesomeness. And if that's what it takes to get through the situation, let that person take stage for a while. And that includes family members. I know, I've had to deal with it. I have certain family members that think that I'm not completely sane, and we've all agreed that's okay. My mommy loves me, and that's enough. And I think she's probably watching right now. Hi, Mom.
And your mummy is lovely.
She is, absolutely. So that leaves us with 14 minis. Yes, exactly. You see that it is barren.
I love that one. He posted it before and it's still so good.
Mhm.
Lay thine eyes upon it, and thou shalt see. It's so good. It's so good.
It's so good. It really is. I completely agree with you.
And a clean way of saying what some of the other ones. Thou can wish in one hand and put feces in the others, and see which one feels faster. Question number thrice while we have.
The protocol actually, so I love that Rob had touched on this earlier about pain. The protective sphere that you do with the timeline, or somehow it was embedded near a timeline event. How do you do that and then bring them up and bring them forward? I just have like a vague recollection of it. Can you run through it again?
Well, I guess I got to answer that one, huh?
Or if anybody has a protective sphere about that they like to use. But like when you're timelining, so that way they're prepared for the event going through it.
I'll jump in on this real quick and then people can add to it. If you know when the appointment is, you know where to place the energy that helps you into the timeline. Whether that be pain block, whether that be verbal communications for an interview, whether that be all of the above. If you have an event coming up that you are aware of, that you want help with, you have the ability to help yourself by going into your timeline, going up to that time space and filling that up with all of the information, energy, stuff that you need. If you've done timeline with energy injection with the 6 pillars, you would realize that you already have the 6 basic pillars of energy running through your timeline completely anyway. You can modify it as needed for that time slot. Does that make sense? And for those of you that are watching this and have no idea what I'm talking about, when would now be a good time to schedule a free 30-minute consult so I can explain some of this to you? We also have some of the recordings of Triple T past, and it should be in the description for timeline colorization with energy injection. That was my DJ coming on stage for just a second.
I have a couple things that I might throw on the, and obviously that just works just fine by itself, but some kind of bells and whistles I sometimes throw on it. First of all, it's just kind of that reminder of, time is an illusion. And so I can go into the future with that energy and I can rehearse whatever it is that I'm going through. And then I can play it and over again as the editor, as the, put different actors on stage and experiment and find the combination of colors and actresses, actors, whatever, that makes it the best it could possibly be, play through it, put it on the timeline, and then I could go into the past and say, and by the way, you've already lived it. You've already experienced it. You already know exactly what it's going to be. It's on your timeline. So as soon as you get to that point, you're just going to live it again. And so, it's the memory of what is coming, basically. But another thing that I sometimes will do, depending on who I'm working with, sometimes I'll also do kind of like mix a polarity drill in with it. And I might have the person basically play the best version it could be and play the worst version it could be. And then show them, hey, you were able to survive the worst version, but you were also able to choose the best version. And then what I do with polarity drills now, so whether it's colors, I'll say it's kind of like clothing that you put on or a color that you could put on. Go ahead and go into, anxiety and then go into peace or whatever, maybe are the two. But then I'll do a third step and I'll say, and then notice that you aren't either one of these. These are just energies you can choose. These are energies that you wear. Now go ahead and take a moment and go above that and put both of them to the side. Notice that you are more than both and that it's always a choice. You can always choose one or the other because it is not you. It only becomes something when you choose to embrace it or something to that effect.
Awesomeness. What I love about this second hour. It's okay, keep going. My computer is full.
I got a question that, leading on from some of these conversations of disappointment or whatever, there's a part of me that kind of wants to get into power and, I'll show them, even with a touch of humorous revenge. Does anybody else have that? What do you do about it?
Did you all
Yes,
see
'cause
what the
we're
part
human.
was?
Sorry, too many people talking.
You go.
I said yes because I'm human.
And it's kind of fun, even if it's only in your mind that you do the revenge, it kind of feels good. And when there's a disappointment or a criticism, a bit of that doesn't hurt.
Yes, exactly. Understand, revenge isn't always a bad thing. It can be very therapeutic, and it doesn't have to be taken out in real life damaging or destroying or hurting the other person. I've blown people up in my mind many times. Like, be gone with thee.
I have done some mental, really over the top revenges, which have actually turned into a lot of fun and ended up with me really laughing about them. And then I don't worry about the situation anymore. So in that respect, it can be very therapeutic.
Very. And healthy, because it's a very easy way to dump off the poison, the negative energy. If that's the dump valve for all of that stuff, absolutely. I've had many of my clients where I'm like, well, what would you like to do to them? And they're like, what? I'm like, no, we're in the control room. We're in the hologram deck. You can do anything you want. They're like, really? Well, I don't want to be that mean. I'm like, then be as mean as you allow yourself to be. Give them what they give them the punishment that is most appropriate. And when you throw in what is most appropriate, then they can go to whatever level they think that is, whether that's flipping them off, or if it's tossing them into a deep pit with, full of scorpions and whatever, or putting the fleas of 1,000 camels in their privates. Whatever works. If that's the dump valve for all the energy that you've been storing for it, then do it. Because once you come out of it, go ahead.
Have you noticed when you've done that in your mind, how much confidence you have when you actually face these people again, and you have already done that to you?
Mm-hmm.
It does
you have
change.
No idea what you've suffered in my cells. And guess what? After I did that, nothing in the budget. None for you. None for you. Off with thee. And that leaves us 3 minutes. Okay, we can choose silence. I mean,
Elijah, what were you going to say about it?
I said, did everyone see where the part is that wants the revenge? Fran, just look down and to your left and think about revenge and tell me how you feel.
It doesn't exist there.
Right. Okay. Now look down and to the right and tell me about getting revenge.
It's a bit better, but it's up there.
Oh, it's up there, so you can see it.
I can see it.
You can see it. That's even better.
Delicious.
And when you see all of that, what happens to you here?
I feel naughty, vindicated rather, sorry, and powerful.
yes.
As you feel all of that, now looking back up there again, what's changed even more?
It transforms by itself.
It does, doesn't it?
I don't even need to do it, but it's
That's right.
still funny to laugh at it.
That's right. Absolutely. That was very good. I don't know if you noticed, but that breath you just took, that kind of sigh, that was very good. That means she gets it too.
And the other
Yes.
thing I was going to add to judgment and revenge, when you first thought of it and you think of the person that you want the revenge to, or the person that you think is judging you, how tall are they? Yeah, you keep looking up. What if you took them and shrunk them to this low
Ant-Man.
and you set them down on the floor and they try and tell you what they think, and you look down and you go, so oftentimes when we're going with people that are dealing with programming from a very young age, where is the voice coming from? Because that's how big mommy and daddy were when they were programming us. And sometimes when I remind them that you're not the child anymore, and you can drop the voices down to here, it makes it much easier for them to analyze whether or not the voices are helpful anymore or not.
And if you can reach a place where you just don't care what they think, you haven't got a problem.
Look at that, all out, but no longer in the budget. Grew out of it. And that brings us right to the top of the hour. So again, thank you guys so much for making this possible all the way up to episode 64. Every single one we add to this it blows my mind, because I've said it many times. I put this off for so long because I didn't know if I had enough stuff to offer for 3 episodes, and here we are, 61 more. And it would be really hard without you guys. Because yes, I've talked to myself, but not for 2 hours straight. So thank you, thank you,
Is that
thank
really
you.
true?
What's that?
Is that really true?
Well, there was that one time out in the, we're not going to talk about that one. Anyhow, as always, I will always make sure that I thank you guys for offering up your time. I will say it every single time. It's the one thing I can't give you. I can't give it back to you. I can't. And for you to set it aside for this means so much to me. And I cherish every one of you and every minute that you share with me, because you don't have to. There's enough other stuff in the world, and you chose to be here. And so thank you from all the particles inside of my heart, my being, and everything. And I look forward to seeing you in 7. Have an amazing, awesome week. Go out and be nice to people.
That's